turn. All of you that are standing by the door, please fill your seats up forward, please. Around the hill.
This is the way it was set up, so I don't know.
Okay, good. I just a little bit more. Watch the box lunch. Is that okay?
Chief Dexter Gold. By the way, can I have a hand for Chief Gold? Will the company please rise? Bugler, colors. Thank you. Be seated, please. During that ceremony, we just raised above the main list a flag that was presented to me in November 1967, while we were off the coast of North Vietnam under the command of Captain McCarty. That flag is now flying above our main list. Off the stern is a commissioning flag that flew above the ship in 1949. Those original Newport News flags. On turret 2 right now flying is a flag that flew in 1972. It was taken off the ship after a raid on Haiphong Harbor. All flags flying above the Salem today are our flags. We're going to give a minute for our flag raising crews to return, and then we'll begin the program. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, once again for the United States Navy Band. 3 years ago, we started a project aboard this ship, and the culmination of that effort is today, with all of you here. You've heard from us in the past about what it has meant to everybody. It's especially meaningful to me because my commanders are here today, as well as so many of the friends that I served with and so many others that I've worked with. But I'm not going to spend a lot of time up here now talking about it because who I want to introduce here is my favorite corpsman, Mike Lanier, who is our museum curator, who is going to begin the museum dedication portion of this ceremony. Mike.
Thank you all. Can you hear me? Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Can you hear me now?
Now.
Thank you all for coming. I'm extremely excited to be here, and the thing that makes it most exciting for me is the fact that you all are here. This is the largest gathering of the crew of the USS Newport News since its decommissioning. We have over 500 crew members and guests, as well as many people helping us on board from USS Salem and the Salem Museum Association. I would like to introduce just quickly a few folks, and then we'll have a few people come up and talk briefly to us about their experiences and share some things with you, and then I'm going to bore you silly with a little history and then tell you a little bit about the museum. So what I'd like to do first is introduce Jim Sheets, who is the director of the Salem. It's the Naval Shipbuilding Museum, and the ship here is the primary exhibit. Joanne Walsh and her husband Joe. Jim, please stand up. Thank you. Well, this is not our ship. It is our ship. They've told us that many times. And because it is so much like our ship, it is truly a twin sister, and we love her. Joanne, please stand up. You and Joe both. For several years, it has been involved with the museum here, even longer than that, and has been a prime supporter of our efforts to bring not only the museum, but the reunion here. And it's through much effort on their part, and many others that won't get introduced today, that we are here having such a great time. They told us that there are 3 rules: no smoking. If you go into a darkened space and you find a light, tell somebody where you went, so when you hit your head, we can find you. And do not cut any locks. Okay? So other than that, please enjoy your day on the ship. When we release you later. Joe Walsh has done some nice things for us, and I've got just a little bit of something to say about him a little bit. There's another gentleman, and I won't ask Don to stand up, but Joe, if you'll maybe just point to him there. Don Shire is the representative of the Salem Court. He has done in many years since the Salem has arrived. They've had over 1,300 man days of volunteer labor from folks that come in from outside the community, and he's been coordinating that. And to give you, and that's what makes the ship look so good today, but to give you a sense of how much work it takes to maintain this ship. Think of it this way: the Salem arrived here in 95, 94, 95, 94. So in October of 94 until late May of last year, they had 1,300 man days of volunteer effort. We had 1,300 man days every day. So this ship looks wonderful, and we thank you, Don, for helping maintain it. We have several people here that I'm going to bring up to the stage one at a time and ask them to have a few words. They've been very much a part of the Newport News in one way or another. We have a gentleman who's come all the way from Australia. We have the current commanding officer of the USS Newport News, the submarine. We have Commander Captain McCarty, who was our commanding officer in 1967 and 8. Prior to that, in 66, getting us ready to go over to Vietnam. Admiral Snyder, who's also here, he was our commanding officer in 68 and 69. And then John's going to introduce a little later, when we get into the memorial service, another fine gentleman, Bob Labaroni, who was the executive officer during the 1972 Vietnam tour. So what I'd like to do first, Steve, if you wouldn't mind come up, Commander from the Australian Navy, Stephen Ewell.
Thank you, Mike. It's pretty awe-inspiring to have over 500 people at a ship reunion. I'm very proud to be here. Admiral Snyder, Captain Carty, Captain Leveroni, Commander Pett, distinguished guests, relatives of those who lost their lives on October 72, members of the US Newport News Museum Memorial Foundation, former crew members, shipmates, ladies and gentlemen. It is my great honour to be here today. I represent not only the HMAS Perth Association, but the Royal Australian Navy. And I thank you for the honours and the recognition accorded, and particularly the band for the fine rendition of Advanced Australia Fair. Well done. The RAN regards its relationship with the United States Navy, past, present and future, as central to its operational and maritime cultural concepts. The relationship was forged in combat, often tragically, as in the Sunda Strait, when the first Perth was lost to the USS Houston, and at Savo Island, and in the Coral Sea and Leyte Gulf. The links have been nurtured and advanced in peace and reinforced the intervening conflicts such as Korea, Vietnam and the Gulf Wars. In late 1967 and early 1968, Newport News and Perth formed a relationship that continues today. The bonds were formed in an operational environment and have been maintained over the years, in the intervening 35 years, by personal friendships and shared experiences. I must say that the evolution of the internet and the enthusiasm of such people as your members, Al Siegel, Chuck Zender, Jim Peden and Dexter Go, has been central to that process. I've often wondered why these links were formed and maintained. Perth operated with many other US ships and several other heavy cruisers. One guess was our shared successes, crew exchanges and the personal friendship of our two captains. But then again, we were the best two goddamn ships out there. And we had the two best call signs, thunder and gunpowder. Perth acted as Newport News' shotgun on numerous occasions, and some of the highlights of our time together were the action off Chow Cay on 18th of October 1967, when Perth was unlucky enough to get hit, but remains the only RAN ship to be hit by enemy fire since Korea. And another memorable event was the rescue capture of a Wiggly crew. My brief time in Newport News in mid-January 1968 was most memorable. I still have my welcome aboard band. There's a picture of Captain McCarty, he doesn't look a day old. I rode T1 with Bob Foxwell. Dexter shared the mysteries of main battery plot, and I nearly got hit by Captain McCarty's battle helmet in the command tactical plot when he had cause to throw it. Captain McCarty also let me con the ship for several unreps, and he sent a signal to my Captain Doyle, which I still have, which said, "From CO to CO, your boy Steve made the approach and is doing a seaman-like job without a word from me. He has had a good professor. You can be proud. High regards, Lindsay." Well, the truth of it was that Captain Doyle let nobody drive his ship, let alone teach them how to. So there were some very jealous, and all senior to me, which wasn't hard, officers in Perth. In January 68, Perth briefly embarked our Chief of Naval Staff, equivalent of your CNO, Vice Admiral McNichol. It was the first time a CNS, Australian CNS, had ever flown his flag at sea in operations. In March, we also had the honour of embarking Admiral Kenny, who flew his flag as Commander 7th Fleet Cruiser Destroyer Force. For this deployment, Perth was awarded a US Navy commendation, which I proudly wear today. Perth did two further deployments to Vietnam in 68-69, which was awarded a USN Meritorious Unit Commendation, and again in 70-71. She continued in frontline service in the Royal Australian Navy until 1999, completing 34 years, and I rowed her into Sydney Harbour for the last time on my birthday, September the 11th, but we won't go there. She was gifted to her home state, Western Australia, after whose capital she was named. We tried very hard to have it preserved as a museum ship, but the costs were prohibitive and there was really no suitable berth. She was subsequently scuttled with due ceremony in November 2001 in Albany Harbour as a dive site, and she attracts 10,000 divers a year. There is also a Perth Interpretive Centre or Museum being established in Albany, and so our sentiments are, well, she's still with us and accessible. I also bring with me a couple of presentations. I was very honoured to be able to give a personal note to Captain McCarty from Admiral Doyle, and I also have a letter here from our Chief of Naval Staff, Vice Admiral Ritchie, and I'll just read it briefly. It's addressed to Al. Dear Mr. Seaton, I'm delighted to learn of the establishment of the USS Newport News Museum and Memorial. The bond established between the Royal Australian Navy and the United States Navy grows stronger by the day. It is one that has a long and glorious pedigree based on a short shared history, and HMAS Perth and US Newport News occupy an important chapter in that history. The ship shared some more than just the gun line off Vietnam. They shared the stresses and strains of war. Those who manned these ships have already provided a legacy of comradeship to the youth of both nations. Today, our two navies continue to operate together in many corners of the globe. Presently, Australia has 2 ships deployed in the Arabian Gulf. These ships build on those bonds formed so many years ago by those who are attending this ceremony for the US Newport News Museum and Memorial. It is with great pride that we share in your celebration. My best wishes to you all on this important occasion. Yours sincerely, Chris Ritchie. Also bringing with me a certificate of recognition from the HMAS Perth Association, and it says, by these presents, the HMAS Perth National Association recognises the dedication and efforts of the Newport News Museum Committee in establishing a memorial to the memory and sacrifice of the 20 crew members who tragically lost their lives in the turret explosion of 1st October 1972. The members of the HMAS Perth National Association wish to add their service to the service of those of the US Newport News who paid the supreme sacrifice. The Perth Association also takes the opportunity on this otherwise sad occasion to send fraternal greetings to their former comrades in arms of the USS Newport News, remembering the good and the bad times and the hard times. Thunder and gunpowder, as the call signs imply, were a formidable team, and the traditions forged all those years ago continue to be maintained and nurtured by our 2 navies today. In honouring those who gave their lives, we also acknowledge and pay tribute to the service of all those of our shipmates who have subsequently crossed the bar. They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them, lest we forget. Thank you again for the honour of being able to contribute to today's proceedings.
Next, I'd like to introduce third-class electrician's mate from the USS Newport News, who's accompanied his commanding officer, Ted Sirosinski. There we go. Please stand up. Weeks ago, so he's on liberty, I guess, this weekend was a captain. Take a look at our beautiful ship. Next, I would like to introduce Commander Fred. Commander Fred. Captain. And he is
Mike Gallo.
She's supposed to sit right here.
Good afternoon again. Apple cider,
What do you need?
apple
Scissor?
cart, Captain,
Scissor. I don't
thank you. Families of our departed shipmates,
my scissor.
crew and families of USS Newport News, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great pleasure for me to speak here today on such an important and historical occasion. The dedication of the USS Newport News CA148 Museum and the memorial for our fallen shipmates of Tort Number 2. For over 26 years, the crew of Newport News protected our country and influenced the events of the world. As I toured the ship yesterday and had a chance to hear sea stories firsthand, it was no surprise to me why Thunder did so well. It was her crew. And there's one thing that runs common to the crew of USS Newport News. It's your pride in your shipmates and pride in your ship. Pride well deserved. Your crew of Newport News answered the call, often on short notice, keeping the nation safe throughout a very challenging time in our history. From Syria and Lebanon in the 1950s, to the blockade of Cuba in 1963, through 3 tours of duty in Vietnam. The sailors of Newport News sailed in harm's way. They took the fight to the enemy, demonstrating outstanding professionalism and tenacity. Always successful, always victorious. They did more than win wars and keep the peace. They set the mark for professionalism and courage for the sailors to follow in their footsteps. Now, I commanded the current USS Newport News, SSN 750, fast attack Los Angeles class submarine homeported in Norfolk, Virginia. Arguably, the nation's submarine force is best designed, best maintained, best trained, carries the most advanced weapons in the world today. Certainly, a modern fast attack submarine is a technological marvel. However, as any commanding officer will tell you, it's not the technology that makes a ship a man of war, it's the fighting spirit of the crew. Today, Newport News is manned by 140 of our nation's brightest and destined young men. But it's the proud traditions, fighting spirit passed to us from the sailors gathered here today that makes my crew a force to be reckoned with. The tenacity and bravery of the sailors of the first U.S. Newport News displayed around the world in the 1950s and the 1960s and in combat operations in the waters of Vietnam are the foundation of the fighting spirit that the crew and I operate our submarine today. The efficiency and professionalism displayed by these men during combat operations such as Sea Dragon, Lancet 72, and numerous gunfire engagements along the coast of Vietnam were the same professionalism and combat efficiency that the current crew of Newport News strive to achieve during recent combat operations in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom. Just as the first Newport News did over 25 years ago, we slipped our war in Norfolk, Virginia in early October last year, returning 7 months later. Like you, we transited the Panama Canal and operated in the Pacific Ocean. We later operated in the Mediterranean Sea in support of the global war on terrorism. We transited the Suez Canal and operated in the Red Sea, eventually launching Tomahawk cruise missiles against the regime of Saddam Hussein. Throughout the 7 months, though, we were the frontline eyes and ears for our fleet commanders. We in the submarine force like to think we invented operating up close and personal, operating in the front lines. But in reality, it was Thunder who spearheaded and honed those skills 25 years earlier in Haiphong Harbor in the littoral waters of Vietnam. It's a true honor to be associated with you and to carry on in your shadow. It's been a pleasure to see firsthand the awesome firepower of USS Newport News and the fine work you've done here to preserve her memory. The museum is first class, and you've done a great job. You've done a great job telling your story. All of you should be proud of what you achieved here today. The story will tell for generations to come. More than seeing the ship, it's been a great pleasure for me to meet you and your families and to share in your reunion. I can only thank the sailors gathered here today for the proud and outstanding legacy they have passed on to me and my crew. We will make you proud. We will uphold the reputation that you have forever tied to the name USS Newport News. I'd like to pass on my personal thank you to you and your families for the service all of you have paid to the Navy and the country. God bless you and your families. Sail safe always. Thank you.
Next, I'd like to ask Captain McCarty to please join us.
maybe you've heard this before, but this is your captain speaking.
Ellen, is there any scissors?
I'm so
I don't know why.
impressed with the magnificent job that all of you who worked made this possible. Get used Salem for our museum, the dedication of those who lost their lives after I left the ship. But on a personal note, let me say that I'm very, very touched and pleased that so many of you take the time to get together to come up, thank me, introduce me to your families, your wives, and thank me for doing what I did and bringing you back home safely many years ago. But it should be the other way around. It is I who should thank you, and I do so now. For such a fine crew, for such a wonderful group of people that I had under my command, that it was very easy for what I did. So I thank you for your job under my command and making the command successful. I look back on those years, it seemed like a long time ago. And a lot of water has gone by since then. I still try to keep a little touch of it though. I do have a wonderful motor sailor that I've been lived on and on the floor on and back and forth. And it has a blue hull. And it's kept as smart as ever was this Thunder. But I named the boat Blue Thunder. And so a little piece of Newport News of Thunder goes on. Thank you again for having me, for being so gracious in your comments. That is all. Good night.
I wasn't going to make an extra comment, but I have to tell you one thing, that all of us remember every night at sea as young sailors, we would hear our Captain McCarty get on the 1MC and just make us feel a little bit more at ease, and he'd always end up, thank you and good night. And we thank you, sir.
I don't think I'll have any trouble with the last name, but the rank is going to give me a little bit of trouble because I want to introduce Captain Snyder, but now he is Vice Admiral Snyder. So without any further ado, my other former commanding officer, Vice Admiral Snyder.
Let's start out by reading an article from our local paper. No, the China Post Hong Kong published an article about Newport News when we came into Hong Kong and one of our business
there that I like to read over and over again because it's such a, to me, almost an exciting and interesting description of our ship. And I think it's very good. Sure. The last of the Leviathans, China Morning Post. The hearts of old New Navy hands must have beat a little faster when they crossed the harbor these days. But rare indeed is what they see, and the gaze on the powerful ability of carrying big guns. The Newport News, now moored in the Navy in Anchorage, is one of the last of the breed of anchorage in feminine. And the days when ships with big guns ruled the seas and proudly showed the flag on goodwill cruises around the world. Gone are the days when the cruiser was the Navy's maid of all work. Symbol and distant points of the nation's through ability to maintain its rights anywhere on the high seas. Now that the battleship is gone, the way of the ship of the line, with a single exception of recently activated U.S. New Jersey, the mantle of seaborne power is passed from aircraft carriers to missile carrying submarines. But neither class of these vessels can match the ideal of a ship carrying big guns. They were designed to awe and awe they could, and did when necessary. They could hit hard and travel far and fast. With their long, clean barrels that bespoke the nation's will. And while they no longer matched the destructive power of carrier-borne jets or missile launched from under the sea, it was guns that carried the flag as stationary statues of victory in battles with the Armada to Surigao Strait. When the gun went into decline, so did the ships that carried them. Electronics took over, and today's men of war carried tactical aerials and fighting tops, helicopters, and ships. The missile launchers on quarterdecks, none of them modern marvels, was given to a fighting ship, and special arrogance that big guns did have. These ships are also almost gone, and soon the last of these will go out of commission and end in the baker's yards. Not these two. Till then, men who love the sea and respect that sea power, won and over exercised by the authority of big guns, will relish the rare glimpse of ships as Newport News. All too soon, they will live wholly in the minds of old sailors and on dry pages of history. And I was sleeping, we were in there for about 3 days in Hong Kong. This was on the big picture of the Newport News sitting in the middle of the harbor, and this was on the editorial page. And it was really a fascinating thing. All the harbor was full of people, including the people who were climbing, the little girls climbing the ships, taking them all along, cutting them down and painting them. But Hong Kong was a very very interesting and unique place, and everyone who went in there really enjoyed it. Now, everyone, last one of us, can certainly share the pride of accomplishment of Thunder. The record has been in all hands effort. And I can say proudly that we have been a magnificent team. As I bring my last view from the bridge to a close, all I can say to all you fine shipmates is, men of Thunder, I salute you. You all are the best of the best. May our our paths cross again sometime in the future. And they have. Thank you.
Thank all of you gentlemen for helping kick off our memorial, museum and memorial service. Al and I are best of friends. He's asking me, can I cover it now? After I told him about the museum.
Oh, they need to see it. Are you sure? They need to see it.
I was asked to get a little talk, and unlike your meeting last night, I'm pretty much covered now. About the history of the Newport News, but I've had several gentlemen get up here in front of me, and they've pretty well covered everything. What I did want to talk about briefly, though, is why these ships. We stand here. Was that here? Why these ships? Admiral Snyder just mentioned the fact that basically on the high seas, these ships are gone. We still have 2 battleships, I think, that have been retained, but if you think about it, and we're all old enough and mature enough to think about it, what really is their role? But the point is, when we pulled into harbor and those 9 8-inch guns were sticking up in the air, there was no question in anybody's mind what we were there for and what we were about. And while I admire and greatly respect the submarine force, you don't see them. Which is what they want. So I was going to tell a little bit about the history of Newport News, but we've already heard about Syria, we've already heard about Lebanon, we've already heard about the Mediterranean, many cruises in the Caribbean, and our definite involvement in the Vietnam War, and subsequent to that, the commanding officer of the Atlantic Fleet, the largest naval fleet, I think, in the world, standing off the Russian threat into Cuba, with guns leveled directly at a trawler, or not a trawler, but a freighter, not more than a few hundred feet away. I was asking somebody, would the projectiles have even armed by the time they got to the target? And somebody said, all it takes is 2 revolutions and we're good to go. So it would have done the job. But Jackson, I think, has got an excellent video down in our museum. I wanted to take you back about 150 years, and I'll speed things up. But the Monitor was the first iron ship with rotating turrets. Look at what we have and what we served on. After that, the shipbuilding took a major leap in around 1900 when the Boston, the Atlanta, and another cruiser were put into commission. They had large guns that were made of steel, but they still carried sails. 50 years after that, the Des Moines class cruiser was the culminating cruiser construction. And why was that? During the Battle of Savo Island, when I'm sure Steve will remember, we lost the Canberra as well as 3 other U.S. cruisers. The problem was we couldn't shoot fast enough. The Japanese came in, nailed us, and they were out of there. So shortly after that, in 1943, a construction and design began to evolve around rapid-fire 8-inch guns. And these guns, ladies and gentlemen, I'm sure all you wives have heard this, but hopefully there's a couple of people here who have not. These guns could shoot 1 round each second out of each barrel. We could put 90 rounds in the air before the first one hit the target. And it was fun listening. I did sneak up on the bridge too. It was fun to listen to the spotters when we were on target. So why are we here today? We're here today to remember and celebrate. We can remember times in the Arctic Circle. We can remember times in the Pacific. We can remember times in the Med, the Caribbean. We can remember times when we were in serious trouble. We were being shot at. And as Al said, captains, both of them came on after those events and told us what was going on. Because when we were below decks, you just prayed to God we didn't get hit because we didn't know what was going on. And so these guys kept us informed and told us what was happening. We were the flagship of the Mediterranean fleet for approximately 10 years, sharing those duties with Illinois, and this lovely twin sister, Salem, our host today. And again, I want to thank all those from Salem for supporting us in so many, many ways. While in Vietnam, which is where when I served, we served 3 tours. I did the first 2, and we have a gentleman who probably served all 3. I don't know that there is one, but we also had the 72 tour. In total, we fired 58,489 rounds of 8-inch ammunition. I don't know the tonnage, but that's a bunch of bullets. We fired in total during those 3 tours 120,000 rounds of all kinds of ammunition, 3-inch and 5-inch combined. Our ship served 26 years. It ended its service in 1975. The decommissioning crew, I would like the decommissioning crew to please stand. Anyone who was on the decommissioning crew, please stand. Well, there's got to be one up there. Well, we'll make sure you get here next time. I want to thank them, though, for putting our wonderful ship to rest with dignity. She lives on now. She lives on in us, and that's why you and I are here. She lives on in our museum. She lives on in Africa, where one of her generators is now powering a small village. She lives on in our website, which Chuck Zender started about 5 or 8 years ago with 3 pages. It's now the largest website in the world for a single naval vessel with over 400 web pages. History, Union information, and many, many other points of interest. I hope all of you visit that webpage, www.uss-newport-news.com. She lives on because Al Siegel, the president of our museum society, came aboard the ship here 3 years ago and said, wouldn't it be neat to have a museum here for the Newport News? If you haven't seen it, I'm sure you will later on. It is a wonderful, wonderful museum. With a lot of perseverance and determination, Al found our ship's bell at the Mariners Museum in Newport News, Virginia. If you'll think back to the Raiders of the Lost Ark, the movie a few years back, where the little old guy right at the end is pushing this cart down through an old warehouse. Okay? Well, Al and I roamed the museum, could not find the bell, found the director, and our bell was in the back, in the back, in the back. So Al got in touch with the Navy Yard, and our bell is now aboard Salem, down in our museum, and Joe Walsh is here to take just a moment of credit because we got down to the 2nd deck. Our museum is on the 3rd deck. We could not figure out how to get it through the hatch. And Joe turned it upside down for us and wiggled it down in there. And the reason I point that out is that it's not been just us, it's been all of you. You've donated forks, you've donated blue nose patches, you've donated wool blankets. Captains, you're not here. You've donated many, many wonderful things. As many as we could find space for, we have displayed. We have, in the last 9 months, been given some additional space, so the museum is still a work in progress. This is not a finished museum, but it is now going to be officially open. Our bell, for example, was not only put below by good people, it was brought up by good people. Our dear friend Rags Ragland, who was our chairman of our reunion committee for many, many years, ponchoed the drive to bring the bell up here. He and Tim Casavo and his lovely wife Laura drove it all the way up here, and then we got it on board. As you walk around the decks today of Salem, I'd like for you to think back. Think back 28 years when the ship was decommissioned. Think back to that cold January day in 1949, standing at attention during the commissioning ceremony. Think of all the years in between. Be confident with me that the Newport News lives. It lives on in you. Have a great day. I have one more person that's going to come up and speak to us before we do our dedication. And this gentleman has done many things on board the ship here to help with the museum. But not only that, he's become an extremely good friend of all of us who've been working on board the ship. We look around and we see many people in whites. Many guys wearing navy blue, or Newport hat. This gentleman wears a different uniform. He wears the uniform of the United States Marine Corps. Art, please come.
Greetings. Good morning. We find ourselves here today on the 28th day of June aboard the USS Salem, sister ship to our own Newport News, for two purposes, both honoring men who served their country. Our first purpose is the dedication of the turret 2, which being dedicated to the 20 sailors who, while serving on the USS Newport News, were killed in an explosion that occurred in the turret on October 1st, 1972, during the Vietnam War. Our second purpose is to announce the opening of the museum. The museum will display memorabilia, artifacts of the news, the ship we all served on, and where I served from 1957 through 1959, a Marine on sea duty. I still get the emotional feeling when I drive into the shipyard and see the Salem berthed here. I visualize the Newport News, and I remember my days on board. There is a section of the museum dedicated to all Marines who served on the news. Many people, including sailors, helped in the putting together what we hope is a good representation of Marine life while serving on naval ships. Civilians may not be aware that Marines do serve sea duty aboard ships. As I was looking up some information today, I found some interesting facts. The Marine Corps has several missions assigned to it by the government. The first and oldest mission assigned to the Corps is, and I quote, duty afloat aboard armed vessels of the Navy. End of quote. Marines who served sea duty aboard the news, myself included, fulfilled that mission. Marines have served on sailing vessels from the great days of the great sailing ships. I quote again from the complete Marine Corps history. Nearly all ships carry a body of Marines known as the Guard, varying in size from a few men to 80 or more. It is a custom to cause all Marines to serve at sea 3 to 4 years of their each enlistment. On board ship, they perform many sentry and orderly duties. They assist in the police duties. They also are instructed in many exercises pertaining to the Navy. In action, they act as riflemen on many ships, serve a portion of the guns. End of quote. In our modern-day Navy, the duties of the Marines at sea duty may not be a rifleman shooting at the enemy from the sail rigging, but perhaps providing break cover for boat-offs. You can check out the Marine Detachment display in our Newport News Museum to find out the duties of a Marine on the Newport News through its 26-year history. Some of our duties included rendering honors to foreign and domestic dignitaries, special security teams, armed landing parties, riot control, internal security of the ship, orderlies for the captain and executive officer, manning both 3-inch 50 and 5-inch 38 mounts. Train, and train some more. We fulfill these duties with courage and pride, continuing a long, proud history of Marines at sea. Another honor of the Newport News that I must mention is that 2 Congressional Medal honors served on this ship. I am proud and humbled to say both of these Medal of Honor winners were Marines. During my time aboard the Newport News, I had the honor of meeting and serving under Captain Archie Van Winkle. He was a Medal of Honor in the action in Sudan, Korea as a staff sergeant. Captain Van Winkle was a commissioned commanding officer of the Newport News Marine Attack from 1958 through 1960. Captain Van Winkle went on to retire as a full colonel and is now passed on, serving as Supreme Commander in the heavens. Corporal William David Morgan served aboard the Newport News from 67 through 1968. I do not have the honor of meeting this young man, yet his courage astounds me. Corporal Morgan crawled through jungles and charged an enemy bunker, creating a diversion that saved many lives of injured Marines. He lost his own life that day. Please take time to view the display below in the Marine Detachment section of the Newport News Museum. Read the citation honoring these two brave Marines. Before I end, I must mention corpsmen and Marines. Corpsmen, Navy medics, and Marines together make a team that saves thousands of lives under hostile conditions. The bond between Marines and corpsmen is strong and must be acknowledged. In closing, it has been a privilege to serve the Newport News as a young Marine. It is a privilege to be part of this reunion, meeting and working with sailors and other Marines who served on the ship throughout their 26 years history. Have a great day. Semper Fi!
I'd like to ask Captain McCarty and Admiral Snyder to join us up on the podium here. We're going to have a ribbon cutting ceremony for our museum. And I'd like Captain Maroney, please, hold the ribbon. And also Commander
Two in your head together. Captain Carney,
Some of you know, let me say that Admiral Snyder and I have a long history together. We were both in submarines during World War II and made war patrols, stayed in submarines. I commanded the USS Newport, the first snorkel submarine in the Navy, and about a couple of years later, Ted Snyder came aboard and commanded it. And I took command of the Newport News, and he came and followed me, so we've been around and about.
One great guy.
We have one small piece of business that I'd like to ask Jim Eaton, our reunion chairman. I know Jim last night was busy trying to make sure that everybody got something to eat and that the band showed up and that the band showed up. And so he has been playing a very, very key role in our reunion and our memorial service and our museum opening. So Jim had asked to speak just for a couple of moments to clarify a couple of things from last night.
This is not a speech or anything, this is kind of a cleanup of business from last night's meeting. But while I have the microphone, I want to mention one thing. About a year ago when we started planning this particular event, I would get calls and phone calls and emails from Al Siegel. He said, well, what do you want to do for this? What do you want to do? What time are you going to do this? And I realized that Al Siegel was really eager to get involved in planning on Salem. So I said, here's the deal, Al. I will get the guys here. I will get them fed, and I will get them back, and the rest is up to you. So for all week long, people have been running up and telling me what a great job I've been doing. This event today, the planning, the man, the real, everything, basically was Al's baby. He was the man here for this ceremony. The unfinished business was from last night. discuss what are we going to do in 2005, and we briefly discussed the possibly uncertain future of USS Salem. And today, in the elevator between, or last night, between the rooms 2 and 7, I was collared by some board members who said it is time for action. We cannot leave these people hanging, wondering where we're going to be in 2005. And your directors are, if nothing else, men of action. So somewhere between the 2nd and the 7th floor, we simply said, let's go for it. Okay, we are committed to the USS Salem. It is our sister ship. It is our only remaining legacy, the last surviving heavy gun cruiser in the world, preserved here. We're going to defend this ship. We're going to be back here in 2005. There are no other options. Plan on it. Last week in June 2005, start saving your pennies and dimes, folks, because we're coming home. Also, at this time, I want to... As you know, we've grown to become a very large organization. We're starting to partition out the duties. I'm going to remain on as your president. It's going to be largely an honorary position because the actual work is going to be done. Chuck Zinner's going to be running the ship's store. It's an independent operation now that it's placed in Oregon. And we are going to have the actual reunion planning be done by what is going to be officially known as the Reunion Committee of the Board of Directors of the USS Newport News Reunion Association Incorporated. Getting a lot of long words here. Bottom line is I have announced that there are 2 new board members who are going to be adding to the Board of Directors of the USS Newport News Reunion Association Incorporated. Number 1 is Mike Lanier, who is the curator of the USS Newport News Museum and Memorial Foundation Incorporated. These are 2 separate operations, incidentally. Mike is our newest board member. If anything goes wrong, blame Mike for it. The other side of that coin is whenever it comes to discussing the ship, Mike gets 4 votes. The second thing is that we have found a, well, I can say this is the sucker word, we have found a volunteer who's going to be willing to do the detailed planning for Reunion 2005, and he is going to be the chair of the Reunion Committee of the USS Newport News Reunion Association Incorporated, now in the process of going through all the paperwork, and that is Mike Callow. Mike Callow. Anything goes wrong, it's all Mike Lanier's fault.
Again, thank you for putting together such a great reunion. Before we move on, I'd like to make a presentation from all of us to the gentleman sitting over here on my right who doesn't know he's going to get it, for all of his hard work. Al has, Jim alluded to a moment ago, put in hours and hours and hours and hours, and I'll stop there because he was here early this morning, he was here late last night. He has made and been the driving force of our meeting. John's going to give a couple of words, and then we have a plaque.
Al and I go back a long way. And Al has been saying now for months, I don't want any special recognition. I don't want any major part in this. I just want to recognize everybody that's done their job. And we've all done our job, but it was Al really that motivated us. It was Al really who made this all possible. So in recognition of your superior and untiring efforts to make the USS Newport News Museum and Territory Memorial a reality, your shipmates wish to present this plaque to you with our sincerest appreciation and thanks. Your dedication and drive were the motivating force that kept our efforts on track, and without which this day would never have become a reality. 3 years ago, almost to the day, Al said to me, what if we build a museum on board the Salem? And look what we did. Al? Plaque reads, presented to Al Siegel in recognition and appreciation of your love for your ship, dedication to your crew, and lasting memories for all.
the USS Newport News CA148 Museum and Memorial Foundation, 28 June 2003. Thank you, sir.
They said that in every report.
You know, when Admiral Snyder was talking about Hong Kong, I had different thoughts. I was going that my wife and kids are here. I don't know. I'm really a little bit weird about doing this. I really feel that the reason the Newport News was the best guard ship in the Navy was because we were a crew. Not one person made the difference. We all worked together. And I don't think one person needs to be highlighted, you know, but I certainly appreciate the recognition. I did come aboard. I'd say John and I were bunkmates, but I'm afraid I don't know what that is. And Doug Shimada over there. Stand up, Doug. Come on, stand up. Dougie. Stand up, Charlie. Stand up. Stand up, Charlie. We all served together in Holy Division under Captain McCarty and Captain Snyder's command. And I'm honored to have them with me. I'm honored to be here. And God bless you all. And as they said, we'll be back here in 2 years. Thank you very much.
The program gets a little longer because every time I sit down, I think there's somebody else I need to mention. And there's one other gentleman sitting up here who did not want to sit up here. He didn't want to say anything. But Bob Freeman and his lovely wife Helen have put in nearly as many hours working on this project. Definitely on board ship. He has been our man on the scene. Al lives in Los Angeles. I live in North Carolina. John lives upstate New Hampshire. Many of the other folks who have participated live miles and miles away. Bob just lives down the road. He gets every other Friday off. Virtually everything that you physically see that has been brought here, the lunches, the chairs, the ice, the tents, the sound, this guy rounded it up for us. Bob, please stand up. I'd like now to turn the program over to John Knoll. John Knoll is going to lead us through the memorial ceremony for our fallen comrades in the 1972 explosion. John.
Good afternoon. I think I can break us all up into two groups. One group is shipmates, and the other group are friends and family of shipmates. And I'd like to give you our greetings. At about 0100 hours on 1 October 1972, while engaged in operations against enemy forces, the USS Newport News suffered a massive explosion in Turret 2. The explosion and resulting fire took the lives of 20 of our shipmates. Shipmates, a term that has no equal in civilian language. Shipmates, a term that transcends time. So that whether you are part of the commissioning crew, or the decommissioning crew, or any crew in between, we are all shipmates together, having in common our service aboard the News. When these men died, it was a loss felt by all of us. And that is why we are here today, to honor their sacrifice and their memory. I'd like to introduce Captain Leveroni, who was the XO for that third deployment to Vietnam, and he's got some words he'd like to say. Captain.
I want it understood that I'm speaking today not only for myself, but for our commanding officer at the time, a good friend of mine, Captain Zeke Zartman, who has since deceased. And to give you an idea of the kind of man Zeke was, I have to refer to our Marine friend. When we had an administrative inspection in Norfolk, and a young Navy lawyer got up and announced that a Marine detachment was standing port and starboard and not 1 in 3 as Admiral Zumwalt had dictated. And Zeke, with that wonderful smile of his, turned to Captain Frank Thomas and said, "Captain, would you care to comment?" Frank, who was all of 5 foot tall, would look 8 foot tall anytime you got across him, said, "I would like to say very respectfully, sir, that to the best of my knowledge, Admiral Zumwalt is not the Commandant of the Marine Corps. And secondly, my Marines stand port and starboard because that's the way they like it." I'd like to take you back to the spring of 1973. In early April, without warning, North Vietnam massed a massive invasion of South Vietnam with no subterfuge. On a Sunday morning, I got a call from Captain Zartman asking me how soon I could get down to the ship. And I said, "Well, can I have an hour?" He said, "Sure." He said, "The Chief of Staff of the 2nd Fleet is waiting for you on the ship." And Ann said, "What's that all about?" And I said, "I think we're going to Vietnam because on Sunday morning, Captain Meredith Smith plays golf. And if he's on the Newport News waiting for me, it's got to be important." The purpose was that 2nd Fleet had been notified to find a new home because the chances were that we would be going to Vietnam. Long story short, we got our orders Monday morning. We went to quarters. The whole crew already knew it. That's why my job was always so easy. Thursday afternoon, we sailed. With brief fueling stops in Panama, Pearl Harbor, and Guam. 22 days later, at an average speed of 23.2 knots, we arrived in Civic Bay on the 8th of May, on the 6th of May. 8th May, we sailed north, and at about 2 o'clock in the morning on the 10th of May, we led 2 light cruisers and 2 destroyers into the Haiphong Harbor complex. Until, from that moment, on the 10th of May to the end of November, her radio call sign was Thunder, and Thunder did. In that period of time, we fired 50,776 rounds of all ammunition. Of those, 28,295 were 8-inch. And then on October 1st, we got a bad round. And we had what I call an event. A round exploded in the center gun of turret 2, blew back through the breach, and killed 20 members of our family. Within 36 hours, the Navy Weapons Center in Dahlgren, Virginia, had duplicated the event. They blew up a barrel just like ours, and said with absolute certainty that it was a defective auxiliary nose detonating fuse. That there was absolutely no fault by any member of the gun crew, nor of any member of the gunnery department that very carefully inspected every one of those rounds when it came aboard ship. So that's why I call it an event rather than an accident, because nobody on board did anything wrong. We also medevaced 37 men with various injuries, mostly from smoke inhalation. We're fortunate to have a ready amphibious group nearby with a helicopter and a surgical team on board, which I think probably accounted for saving many of the lives of the people that we evacuated. This morning I had an opportunity to meet one of those men who got medevac, because I never knew what happened to any of them, except for the chaplain who came back and I wanted to strangle him. I told him not to do it, but he did. So I asked him, and he told me that he got medical discharge. And I said, "And what did you do subsequently?" He says, "I spent 27 years as a firefighter." So that tells you the kind of people we have in Newport News. In summary, we were gone 231 days. We were at sea 189 days, 83% of the time. Except for one wonderful week in Hong Kong, I have to tell you, I never thought I would think Subic Bay was pretty. But I want to talk briefly to the family of Cecil Shaw who's here this afternoon. Thanks to Al, this memorial is being moved from Newport News to this ship. I think it is extremely fitting that the memorial be aboard this ship in the environment where these men lived and worked and fought and ultimately died. God bless them all.
Thank you, Captain. Shortly after we began the initial planning phase for the museum, Joanne Walsh, the then director of the U.S. Naval Shipbuilding Museum here on the Salem, approached us with an idea. The Salem people knew well the tragic events of 1 October 72, and they were wondering if we would like to take over Salem's Turret 2 and build some kind of a memorial. And that's what we did. We built some kind of a memorial. All I can say is that when I first looked into Turret 2 that day, I thought, well, maybe someday we could get the booth cleaned out, but that was pretty much all we were going to be able to handle. But you all know, and many of you from first-hand experience, that that's not what happened. We got the booth cleaned out, and we got all 5 levels of the deck cleaned out. And when I say cleaned out, I don't mean they picked up the litter and carried it out. They soaked up all the hydraulic fluid, they cleaned up every piece of brass they could find, and they painted it, and they painted it, and they painted it again. I'd like to introduce, there were 2 men, there were a lot of men involved in this firsthand, and a lot of the children of our crew members as well. But out of that whole group, there's 2 men whose efforts really stand out. These men worked hard, they worked diligently, and they worked pretty much without any desire of recognition. That's Joe Shea, and I'd like Joe to stand up. And Al Babson.
There you go, Al.
Al Babson left the ship as a gunner's mate 2nd class. His GQ station on the news was Turret 2. He was transferred off shortly before we had the explosion. I'd like to ask Al to come up and just give you some idea of what was involved in restoring this. Al?
Thank you very much. How you feel now? That's about half of my speech. I'd like to thank everyone that came here today for coming, and I hope you all enjoy yourself on board the Salem. I hope many of you will return again in the future for for work parties. We can use the help. Those of you that have come back for any of the past work parties, I want to thank you again. You can all take great pride in the help that you've given to the Salem. I came over to the Salem after the last reunion in Norfolk. Living locally, I knew that there was a ship over here in the Quincy shipyard, but I didn't realize that it was the sister ship to the Newport News. When I first went below decks in T2, it was a real mess. Those of you that came to the first work party will remember that the hydraulic oil was over everything. I understand that we were the first ones to go below in T2 in 17 or 19 years. Hydraulic oil, which of those of you that don't know, is an oil sort of like dirty car oil, only about the consistency of maple syrup. Over the years, it had leaked over everything. On the projectile level, there were drain pans that were about 2 inches thick. They were full and overflowing. The oil had dripped down to the 5th deck down in the turret, which is the powder handling room. Mixed with the oil was the water from the rain and the snow over the years. So much had leaked down the bulkheads to that level that someone, presumably on the Salem, had spread kitty litter over the deck to about an inch thick depth. The first work party, I was put in charge of the cleaning of T2 because I was an 8-inch gunner's mate that had served with most of the guys that had died aboard the Newport News. I'll admit, I too had no idea what we could get done because I figured, not hate to admit this, but with the age and mobility of all of us, it wasn't quite the same as it was 60 or 30 years ago. I thought, too, that we might be able to clean up the roof or the top level of the turret. And polish the brass, and that would be about it. I was wrong. You guys all fooled. We've had up to 3 generations of one family and both sexes down in the turret helping to clean it up. All of you helped to get the turret ready for today and take great pride in the work you've done in T2. I don't know why many of you helped, because there's only a few of you that served during the accident. 72. So not many of you knew the men that gave their lives for our country, but they were your shipmates, and you pay them great honor with the work that you performed up and in the turret. As mentioned, there were many people that helped get the turret ready for today, and I'm bad remembering names, and it was too many to list off, but there are a few that I'd like to take special time to thank. As already mentioned, Joe Shea is a local resident, and he's been here probably more hours than myself. Well, I know more hours than myself. And he should be up here doing this, but I understand he's stage shy. He comes just about every weekend throughout the year. He helps open up the ship at 5 a.m. He served before me on the Newport News in the 5-inch gun mounts. Another one that I would like to thank that served with me in the 2nd Division and got injured in the accident is Richard Jordan. He mentioned at one of the work parties that he remembers me as the supply PO for 2nd Division that never got the turrets enough oil, which was probably true. But he came, he went down the low decks and helped clean up all that oil. Is that enough? All of you that came to the work parties and helped on the Salem, or to this weekend at least, helped get the Newport News ready for this ceremony. I thank you greatly. I'd also like to thank both of the committees and the organizers for the reunion and the work parties, Jim, John, Mike, Bob, and Al. And unbeknownst to anybody else, this is my work hat. They threatened me that if I brought this or wore this, that I'd get thrown overboard. Well, I'm going to fake them out. I wanted to go down in the museum.
here today is not to agonize again over the deaths of these 20 men, but rather we're here today to proclaim to all those people who will visit this ship in the coming years that their sacrifice was not in vain, nor will it ever be forgotten. The Vietnam War was not very popular at home in 1972. Many returning veterans were openly and cruelly criticized for their involvement. It seemed as if the country had asked them to do a job, only to turn around and blame them for doing what they had been asked to do. Why did these men deserve blame? What had they done wrong? They hadn't done anything wrong. They did their duty. And from the day, from the day they raised their right hand and took an oath to defend our Constitution until the day they died, they did their duty. The very duty an ungrateful nation had called them to do. But the fact that the war was not popular at home, that the war was not popular abroad, in no way diminishes the gallantry and the gallantry with which these men did their job. I'd like to read a portion of a speech that President Teddy Roosevelt gave in 1910. Ironically, he gave it to the French. And I quote, "It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles, or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again, because there is no effort without error or shortcoming, but who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows great enthusiasm, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory or defeat. Shame on the man of cultured taste who permits refinement to develop into fastidiousness that unfits him for doing the rough work of the workaday world." In a few moments, we'll ask the Navy Band to play the Navy hymn. I learned it first when I was in boot camp, 1966. I know there's others of you here that learned it earlier and later, and I don't think it's changed over the years. I'd like to read just the first verse, and I'd like you to think of the words as the band plays. "Eternal Father, strong to save, whose arm doth bound the restless wave, who bids the mighty ocean deep its own appointed time, own appointed limits keep. Oh, hear us when we cry to thee for those in peril on the sea." As the band plays, I would like to read the names of our 20 fallen shipmates. They're listed in alphabetical order. Seaman Apprentice, Herman Carroll Akron. Seaman Jack Stephen Bergman Jr. Bosun's mate, 3rd class, William Clark Jr. Gunner's mate, 3rd class, Charles Wayne Clenard. Seaman Apprentice, Ronald Paul Daly. Seaman Recruit, Raymond Rance Davis. Seaman Terry Wayne Neal. Seaman Joseph Grisafe. Seaman Apprentice, William Harrison III. Gunner's mate, 2nd class, Tommy Hogger. Seaman Apprentice, Robert Kicker. Seaman Edmund McClaney Jr. Seaman Apprentice, Robert Ward. Seaman Apprentice, Stanley Pilot Jr. Seaman Apprentice Richard Tessman. I'd like to invite all members of that 72 crews, the ground crews, who wish to, and only if you wish to, and whether you're in uniform or not, come forward, and we've got a wreath here in memory of our 20 fallen shipmates. And when CAPS begins, I would like to have the wreath passed hand to hand, each one of you, finally ending up in the hands of Rick Jordan. And then at the conclusion of CAPS, we'll drop the wreath in the water, and we'll say goodbye forever to the memory of the death of our shipmates, but the beginning of our remembering forever of their faith and their loyalty to duty. Could you all stand, please? The ship's company, Lieutenant Hutt, and salute. There were two other crew members, shipmates of ours, that were lost during that 72 crew accidents aboard the ship. And throughout the years, there have been others. We have been in the process of trying to compile a list of all those who have died while serving in Newport News. In the future, possibly at our next reunion, we hope that we can present a memorial fit for their memory as well. The actions that we've taken here today and the memorial that we've built for Turret 2 in no way diminishes the sacrifice that those men gave either. Dying in the service of your country is dying in the service of your country, whether you're engaged in actions against the enemy or if you're engaged in the everyday dangerous job of running a ship like this. This concludes our program for the day, and we invite you all to tour Turret 2 and our audiovisual displays and the museum, which is in the berthing compartment B308 Lima, within their signs down there. Thank you all for your attendance.
I want to thank John Knoll, I think, for a wonderful job he did in the memorial program today. Would you all be kind enough to allow our former commanders to exit first so they can go down to the museum? And then afterwards, of course, please feel free to come down there. I would be most appreciative. Thank you all for coming. Have a very safe day. We'll see you soon.